The studio lights blazed overhead as Bill Maher leaned back in his chair, his signature smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. It was a Friday night, and the set of Real Time with Bill Maher buzzed with the familiar hum of anticipation. The audience, a mix of loyal fans and curious newcomers, settled into their seats, their murmurs creating a soft backdrop to the evening's proceedings. Across from Maher sat Kaitlan, the poised and polished CNN anchor whose rapid rise in the world of broadcast journalism had made her a recognizable face on screens across the country. Her dark blazer was sharp, her expression composed, but there was a flicker of something, perhaps unease, in her eyes as she adjusted her posture. This wasn't her first rodeo, but tonight felt different. Maher had a reputation for cutting through the noise, and Collins knew she was stepping into a space where platitudes wouldn't suffice. The cameras rolled, and Maher wasted no time. "So, Kaitlan," he began, his voice carrying that blend of casual irreverence and pointed curiosity that had defined his career. "You're over there at CNN, holding down the fort at 9 p.m., which, by the way, is pretty impressive for someone who's, barely out of college?" The audience chuckled, and Collins offered a tight smile, nodding slightly. "I appreciate that," she said, her tone measured. "It's been a ride." Maher tilted his head, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. "A ride, sure. But let's talk about the road you're on. I mean, CNN's got this whole thing going where it's supposed to be the straight shooter, right? The place where both sides can tune in and feel like they're getting the real deal. How's that working out for you?" Collins didn't flinch. She'd faced tougher questions, or at least she thought she had. "I think we're doing it," she replied, her voice steady. "My show's proof of that. We've got lawmakers from both sides, Elizabeth Warren one night, Ted Cruz the next. We push everyone. That's the gig." Maher raised an eyebrow, leaning forward slightly. "See, that's what I want to unpack. Because I'm a fan of CNN. I mean, my show airs there on Saturdays, so I've got skin in the game. But when I watch, I'm not always buying the both sides line. And I don't think I'm alone." The audience stirred, a few claps breaking the silence. Collins straightened, her fingers brushing the edge of her notes. "I get that perception's out there," she said, "but I'd argue we're delivering. Look at the Democratic National Convention. 300 people on the ground, real-time coverage. That's not fluff. That's news." Maher wasn't letting it slide. "Okay, let's stick with the convention for a sec," he said, his tone sharpening. "Kamala Harris gives her big speech, ends at 11:09 Eastern, 8:09 my time. And from then until 11:23, it's just wall-to-wall gushing." "Oh, what a speech!" She nailed it, historic moment. I'm sitting there thinking, it was fine. Not bad. But this... He gestured broadly, his hands slicing through the air. 15 minutes of that, and then, finally, Scott Jennings gets a word in. Lonely Scott, I call him. One conservative voice in a sea of praise. If I'm a conservative watching that, I'm not feeling the balance. Collins opened her mouth to respond, but Maher pressed on. "And don't tell me David Urban was there too. It's not about head count, it's about what I'm hearing. It's like The View with better lighting." The audience laughed, and Collins shifted in her seat. She wasn't rattled, not visibly, but Maher's jab had landed. "I don't think that's fair," she countered, her voice firm but calm. "We call bullshit on both sides. That's my job, and I do it. I'm from Alabama, Bill, a red state through and through. My family's conservative, a lot of them Trump voters. They watch me every night, and they trust me because they know I'm not picking a team. I'm digging for what's real." Maher smirked again, resting his chin on his hand. "That's a great story, Kaitlan. Alabama roots, family of Trumpers. Very compelling. But let's be real. Your panel's not exactly a cross-section of America. It's a chorus of agreement with one guy playing the contrarian for effect. Tokenism doesn't equal fairness." Collins didn't back down. "I'd push back on that," she said, her eyes locking with his. "Take the convention coverage. Yeah, we had more Democrats on, because it was their event. But our team, Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, Abby Phillip, they're not cheerleaders. They're analyzing, breaking it down. And when it's the RNC, we've got the other side in full force. It's not about giving everyone equal airtime every night. It's about context." Maher tilted his head again, unconvinced. "Context's a nice word," he said. "But if I'm flipping channels and I land on CNN after that speech, I'm not getting context for 15 minutes. I'm getting a love fest. And then Scott's out there like the kid who didn't get picked for the team. You don't see how that reads." The tension was palpable now, though neither raised their voice. Collins leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped. "I see how it can read that way," she admitted, "but I don't think it's the full picture. I've grilled Republicans, Trump included, harder than most. I was in the White House press corps. I've taken the hits. And I'd argue Kamala Harris dodging the press is a bigger issue than us praising her speech. She's running for president. Answer some questions. Trump at least talks, even if it's a mess." Maher nodded, a rare flicker of agreement crossing his face. "Okay, I'll give you that. Trump's a train wreck, but he's out there. Kamala's playing hide and seek. Still, when you say CNN's fair, I'm thinking about that Colbert moment. You know, when he called you guys objective and the crowd lost it." Collins sighed, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, I remember. It stung a little, not gonna lie. But perception isn't reality. We're not perfect, but we're not MSNBC. We're not picking a lane and staying there." Maher leaned back, crossing his arms. "Maybe not. But you're not Switzerland either. And that's fine. Own it. Just don't sell me the both sides bit when the vibe's so lopsided." The audience clapped again, louder this time, and Collins took a breath, recalibrating. "I'll own what I can control," she said. "My show's about asking the questions people at home are asking. If they're not buying it, I'll keep tweaking. But I'm not here to play defense for the whole network. I'm here to do my job." Maher grinned, sensing the pivot. "Fair enough. Let's shift gears. You've been at this a while. Daily Caller to CNN. Big leap. How do you shake that early baggage? Some folks still see you as the conservative kid who flipped teams." Collins didn't hesitate. "I don't shake it," she said. "It's part of me. I got my start at the Daily Caller because it was an internship that turned into a gig. I needed a foot in the door, and I took it. But I've been at CNN longer, and I've built my cred there. People can judge me on what I do now, not where I started." Maher nodded, impressed despite himself. "That's a solid answer. But you know the internet. Once a label sticks, it's gorilla glue." The conversation veered into lighter territory after that. Some banter about who'd snagged the first Kamala Harris interview. Maher bet on Collins, she didn't disagree. But the core exchange lingered. Backstage, as the crew broke down the set, Collins sipped water and scrolled through her phone, already seeing clips of the showdown popping up online. Maher, meanwhile, headed to his dressing room, satisfied with the night's sparring. He hadn't shut her down in some dramatic viral sense, despite what the YouTube thumbnails would claim, but he'd poked holes in her armor, and she'd held her ground. It wasn't a knockout, it was a draw, and both knew it. The next morning, social media buzzed. Ex-posts called it a smackdown, a roast, an exposure of bias, but the reality was quieter. Maher had challenged Collins, and she'd pushed back, each reinforcing their brand. Him the skeptic, her the scrappy journalist. Pundits weighed in, some praising Maher's candor, others defending Collins' poise. At CNN, her colleagues ribbed her about Lonely Scott, while Maher's team prepped for the inevitable flood of think pieces. In living rooms across the country, viewers replayed the moment, some nodding at Maher's critique, others shrugging it off as cable news theater. For Collins, it was another day in the crucible. She'd faced worse: Trump's barbs, White House briefings, the relentless churn of the 24-hour cycle. Maher's jabs were sharp, but they weren't fatal. She'd be back on air Monday, same time, same slot, digging into the next story. For Maher, it was another notch in a decades-long career of prodding the powerful, the polished, the pretentious. He'd see her again, maybe on his show, maybe on CNN's airwaves. Neither had changed the other's mind, but they'd given the audience something to chew on, a rare, unscripted clash in a world of rehearsed talking points. As the week wore on, the clip racked up views, fueling debates about media, bias, and trust. In diners and offices, people argued over whether CNN leaned too left, whether Maher was too smug, whether Collins was in over her head. But beneath the noise, the exchange stood as a snapshot of a fractured moment. Two voices, two visions, wrestling with a question that wouldn't resolve. Can anyone still play it straight in a game this divided? The answer, like the segment itself, hung in the air, unresolved but impossible to ignore. The studio where it all unfolded remained a quiet monument to that night, its empty seats and dimmed lights a stark contrast to the energy that had filled it hours before. The set, with its sleek desk and oversized screens, was a familiar sight to millions, a stage where ideas clashed and egos sparred. For those who'd been there, crew, audience, guests, it was just another taping, but the echoes of Maher and Collins' back and forth lingered, a testament to the stakes of the conversation. Across town, Collins' apartment was a haven of calm, a place where the hum of the news cycle could be muted, if only for a moment. She sat on her couch, the TV off, her phone still buzzing with notifications she'd yet to check. The exchange with Maher replayed in her mind, not as a defeat, but as a challenge. She'd faced skeptics before, and she'd face them again. Her Alabama roots, her time at the Daily Caller, her climb at CNN, they were all pieces of a story she carried with her, a shield against the doubters. Maher, meanwhile, was in his element, holed up in his Los Angeles home with a glass of wine and a stack of newspapers. The clip was doing numbers, and he knew it. He didn't need to check X to feel the ripple effect. His team would fill him in soon enough. For him, the night wasn't about shutting down Collins. It was about peeling back the layers, exposing the cracks in the polished facade of modern journalism. He'd done it 1,000 times, and he'd do it 1,000 more. The audience from that night, scattered now across the city, carried their own takes on the showdown. Some had cheered Maher's barbs, nodding along as he skewered what they saw as CNN's sanctimonious streak. Others had admired Collins' composure, her ability to stand firm under fire. They'd filed out of the studio buzzing with opinions, their conversations spilling into bars and car rides, each retelling shaped by their own lens. At CNN's headquarters, the mood was business as usual. though the Maher segment was a quiet undercurrent. Producers swapped notes, anchors traded quips, and the machinery of the network churned on. Collins' colleagues respected her grit. She'd earned her stripes, after all. But there was a sense that Maher had tapped into something real, a vein of skepticism that shadowed their work. They'd keep doing what they did, but the critique wasn't easily dismissed. On X, the clip fragmented into 1,000 threads, each post a shard of the larger debate. Some users hailed Maher as a truth-teller, a lone voice calling out the media's drift. Others defended Collins, pointing to her track record, her willingness to take on anyone. Memes of Lonely Scott sprouted like weeds, while earnest think pieces dissected every word. It was the internet doing what it did best, amplifying, distorting, dissecting. The YouTube upload, titled with predictable bombast, "Bill Maher Shuts Down Kaitlan Collins Over Her Political Agenda Live," racked up comments by the minute. Viewers saw what they wanted to see: a takedown, a defense, a draw. The algorithm fed it to the masses, and the masses fed it back, a feedback loop of outrage and applause. It was less about the exchange itself now and more about what it represented, a Rorschach test for a polarized age. In diners, the clip played on muted TVs above the counter, the closed captions lagging just enough to confuse. Regulars sipped coffee and debated, their voices overlapping in a familiar rhythm. "Maher's right, CNN's a cheer squad half the time," one said, jabbing a fork at his eggs. "Nah," Collins held her own, "he's just a loudmouth," another shot back. The waitress, refilling mugs, rolled her eyes. She'd heard it all before. Offices buzzed with similar chatter, the segment a break room talking point between meetings. Some saw Maher as a relic, a boomer railing against a world he didn't get. Others saw Collins as the future, a sharp mind navigating a brutal landscape. The water cooler became a battleground, but no one won. The clock ticked, and work resumed, the argument shelved but not settled. For the crew who'd worked the taping, it was just another night logged, another paycheck earned. They'd mic'd the guests, adjusted the lights, called the cues. Maher's intensity, Collins' poise, it was all part of the job. They'd seen bigger blow-ups, quieter flops. By morning, they were on to the next gig, the exchange a footnote in a long week. The studio security guard, stationed by the exit as the audience left, had his own take. He'd watched from the wings, arms crossed, a silent observer to the verbal sparring. Maher was funny, sure, but Collins had guts. He'd told his wife about it over dinner, and she'd shrugged. Another news spat, same as always. He figured she was half right. Collins' family in Alabama, tuned in from their living room, saw it differently. Her mom beamed at her daughter's poise, her dad nodded at her grit. They didn't love Maher's tone, too smug, too coastal, but they trusted Kaitlan to handle it. She always had. The Trump voters among them still watched her show, still saw her as their girl, even if the network rankled them. Maher's circle, a mix of writers and old friends, toasted the night over drinks. They knew the drill. Bill stirred the pot, and the pot boiled over. The Collins bit was gold, not a demolition, but a dissection. They'd hash it out for days, tweaking the next monologue, riding the wave of reaction. It was the game they played, and they played it well. The clip's afterlife on cable news was inevitable. Rivals at Fox and MSNBC cherry-picked moments, spinning them to fit their narratives. Fox called it proof of CNN's bias. MSNBC framed it as Maher punching down. Pundits pontificated, panels debated, and the cycle churned. Collins and Maher stayed off the rebuttal circuit. They'd said their piece. In the quiet of her apartment, Collins scribbled notes for Monday's show, The Maher exchange a faint echo. She wasn't shaken, but she wasn't smug either. It was a moment, not a verdict. She'd keep asking questions, keep pushing, keep proving herself. That's what she did. Maher, flipping through channels at home, landed on a replay of his own show. He watched the segment again, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Collins was good, better than some he'd tangled with. He'd rattled her, sure, but she'd stood tall. He respected that, even if he'd never say it out loud. The audience members who'd clapped and laughed that night carried the memory home, a story to tell. They'd seen a clash, not a collapse, a dance of wits in a divided time. It wasn't life-changing, but it was something raw, real, rare. They'd tune in again, for Maher, for Collins, for the next round. At the diner, the TV looped the clip again, the debate simmering on. The waitress wiped the counter, half listening. She didn't care who won. She just wanted the noise to stop. But it wouldn't, not yet. The question Maher posed, the one Collins answered, still hung there, unanswered. In that fractured moment, the exchange lived on, not as a resolution, but as a mirror. It reflected a media at war with itself, a public at odds, a truth too slippery to pin down. Maher and Collins had faced off, and the world watched, waiting for a winner that never came.